This right here is my base. Well, at least it used to be. After spending many hours living within the confined space of an RV, I wanted something much more suitable for surviving the apocalypse. And this right here is exactly that. A completely near impenetrable base with a fully stocked garage and a decked out living space. All the essentials you'd need, you could find them here. At least that's what I had imagined. In order to build something like this, it was going to take a lot of time and a lot of work. So we need to start off with the basics. So, the beginning of this adventure was as much about taking stock of what I had and then planning for what I needed. Coming into this with my RV and everything inside of it meant that I had to take some time looking through my storage and noting down all the stuff required to make this huge base a reality. Previously, I had already survived a whole week while living out of this very RV, so scavenging for loot at this very moment was the least of my worries. However, this won't always be the case. Well, anyways, I knew that this base I wanted to build would mostly consist of metal walls, so metal sheets and propane were going to be worth more to me than life itself. First, I sorted through all my crates, separating the propane and metalworking supplies, and once I had gotten a better idea of what I had in stock, I began by making a plan for how I was going to lay out the main structure of my future base. My plan here is to turn this entire intersection into a livable space for me and my RV. Now, I will admit, in my 900 plus hours of playtime in this game, I've never once dabbled into the metalworking side of base building before, so I had to look over their metal costs involved on their wiki to get a better idea of how expensive this base was truly going to be. Each metal wall I would want to construct would cost me at least 3 metal sheets if I just wanted to settle with the lowest tier of metalworking walls. Luckily, I had been keeping stock of metal sheets in my RV, and if I ever needed any more, I could just disassemble some car wrecks on the road. But even if I had the metal required, I'd still need to place down wall frames first to upgrade into metal walls. So with that in mind, I spent a few hours chopping down trees and sawing them into planks. This would give me the materials I need to at least get the wall frames built. I moved a lot of the loot into the center of the intersection since this would be the future location of my home, and I began to set out the framework of the external walls of my base. This was a pretty long process since chopping down the trees and cutting them into planks for the frames took a fair while, but after working my way through the night, I finished up the wood frames for the outermost wall earlier on in the morning. With one task out of the way, I needed to address one of the key obstacles stopping me from getting this base up and running pretty quickly. In order to build metal walls, I would need to level up my metalworking skill. This was because in my previous journey, I hadn't needed to build a base at all. Since I had been living out of my RV, that meant that I'd have to spend a lot of time getting both the levels and recipes needed for a fully metal base. And on top of that, I would need to get my hands on a metalworking magazine that would give me the recipes for the metal walls themselves. So with the two goals established, I spent some time prepping for a trip. I would gear up with guns and ammo to journey into the town of Maldra nearby. I loaded up into the RV and headed into town to get a gauge on the current landscape and see how easy it would be to get my hands on one of the magazines that I would need. But when I closed in on the bookstore, it turns out it was completely overrun with zombies. Yeah, there's a lot of zombies here. This is gonna be pretty hard. So I decided to try and clear out some of the horde with the guns and ammo I had prepared, but when I hopped out of the RV, things didn't exactly go to plan. This is a bit of a problem. Oh my god, my guy's in extreme panic. Oh boy. Oh god, I can barely aim straight. With that drama out of the way, I quickly loaded back into the RV and made my way out of town to take some beta blockers and get some rest. Later on, I headed back into town to try and finish up what I started by clearing out some of the zombies near the bookstore. And after picking them off for a few hours, I managed to clear the entrance of the bookstore, although this would turn to be a risky situation. I decided it was worth saving the ammo needed to fully clear the horde, so I rushed into the bookstore to quickly loot whatever magazines and books I could find. Fortunately, in my search, I found this. Ooh, metalworking 3. That's good. Do need that. And while I wanted to stay and search the bookstore more thoroughly, things were quickly starting to get a little too dangerous for my liking. After rushing out of the bookstore, I decided to take what I found so far and head back to my new base location. While I hadn't found all the books I had hoped for, I had got my hands on a few essential magazines that would let me get a start on my base. Once I returned to the crossroads, I began to make some progress on building up the metal walls. And while I felt like I was making quick work of the structure, I immediately realized that the material cost for a base of this size would be, well, a lot. I'm starting to realize just exactly how long this is gonna take. So, after I constructed only 1/4 of the base, I had already completely run out of both metal sheets and propane, which put a stop to my plans for now. The next morning, I set out on a primary goal to getting some more propane so I could continue building. Fortunately, I knew one place that I could get plenty of propane, and that was the gas station. I made my way there with my RV and found a pretty large group of zombies in the parking lot, so I spent some time clearing them out so this way they wouldn't be a nuisance to me. After the zombies were cleared, I quickly quickly looted the gas station for any food, drinks, or materials that might come in handy. It was around this point that I realized a small problem with my plan. I had lost track of time and I hadn't thought about the fact that there had been no power at this point in my run, so there would be no way for me to get the propane I needed from the pumps. This unfortunately meant that I would have to find a generator to power up the pumps at the gas station. So even though it wasn't in my original plan, I quickly pivoted to searching for a generator since I didn't even have one in my RV.
It doesn't look like there's power. I might need to get a generator then.
I headed closer into town and came across a group of storage units, and luckily from my prior runs, I knew that this could be a great location to search for a generator. But there were also a huge number of zombies in the area, so I spent some time scouting around to see the scale of what I was up against.
Sure is a lot of zombies though.
Now, this wasn't an insurmountable amount of zombies, but I guess I was feeling a bit slack at the time. So instead of addressing the problem at hand, I took a short detour to a warehouse nearby. Even though I needed a generator eventually, it didn't change the fact that I would also need plenty of tools and metal resources. And after clearing a bunch of zombies near the warehouse, I spent some time sorting through all the loot and found plenty of useful tools, carpentry items, metal sheets, and even welding rods.
I'm just gonna grab everything that I might need. Ooh.
I also found an antique stove, which while it wasn't a priority, it would be something I'd want to come back for and pick up later for my new base. After going through the whole warehouse, I decided to stop being so lazy and start tackling the main issue at hand by just clearing out all the zombies in front of the storage units. And after working overnight clearing them out, I was finally able to search the units themselves by the next morning. Luckily enough, my Loot Goblin senses were pointing me in the right direction, because I quickly got my hands on the generator I had been searching for.
Ooh, generator, let's go.
So with my newly found generator, I loaded it into the RV and made my way back to the gas station where I connected it to the pumps. First, I would begin loading up my gas cans with all the gas I could fit in them, and then followed up with filling up all my propane. Unfortunately, this wasn't exactly possible in the base game, but I did have a mod installed that would allow me to do this, meaning this would be a one-stop shop for all my gas and propane needs for the future of this run. And just in case you might be interested in what mods I'm using, you can check the description below where I'll have a list provided for you guys. Usually, I don't tend to play with a lot of the crazy, wacky, OP mods, but I do always play with a lot of the vanilla expansion ones or quality of life kind of mods, so if you're just curious, you can check below. Now, anyways, with both the materials and propane obtained, I could finally continue work on my envision for the road base. So I made my way back and continued work on upgrading the walls, but unfortunately, it didn't take long for me to run out of metal sheets.
So I've already pretty much ran out of metal sheets to use.
And normally this wouldn't be a huge problem. I would just spend some time searching through the area to find some more, but there was a catch. One thing I didn't mention up until this point was that in this run, there was a possibility that with each passing day, I could be attacked by a giant zombie horde. Not only would I be guaranteed an attack once a week, but there was a completely random chance that one could attack me at any time. The reason I bring this up is because my base was barely standing, and it was definitely not what I would consider defendable. So each hour I wasted searching through the buildings and clearing zombies could potentially lead to me being, well, dead. So instead of going on another aimless looting run, I instead opted for the guaranteed method of finding metal sheets by dismantling wrecks. This was both a way that I could get metal sheets more consistently near my base, but also would help level up my metalworking for my long-term plans. Essentially, it was a win-win.
There it is.
After dismantling a heap of wrecks, I made more progress on the shell of my future base, which was actually starting to take shape. Well, kinda. I quickly placed some storage boxes with spare metal I had so I could finally start stocking up some more loot. And then I continued on the path, dismantling car after car after car, which honestly might have convinced me to not make a metal base in the first place if I wasn't already committed so hard to the idea of it, but I made a decision and I'd have to suck it up and get the job done. And after a long, continuous, and daunting task, I finally finished the outer shell of the metal base and started to set out the frames of the inner portion of my living space, which required, you guessed it, more planks. So I bet you can see where this is going. I cut down more trees into logs and saw the logs into planks. And maybe it was a fact that this area was pretty peaceful, or maybe I was just going a little bit insane, but all the things considered, my mood was pretty high. Now, the only downside to all this work is that my character would get ridiculously exhausted, since one thing had come in the last few weeks of my journey was that I was pretty much just skin and bones. I was concerningly underweight. Now, I know what you're thinking, this guy is pretty tough and meaty and kind of handsome, but unfortunately the cruel reality was that my weight was something I'd had to keep trying to address as the time went on. And if you don't know much about Zomboid, your character's weight can be quite the burden. In my case, my character was very underweight, which in simple terms means that I was weak and easily exhausted. The only way to fix that problem was by fattening myself up with tasty high-calorie foods. And now that I say that out loud, it doesn't actually sound so bad. So anyways, once I'd have my outline down of my inner base, I crafted a metal workbench. I don't really know why, since I couldn't figure figure this out, but I'm not really sure how to use it. So since I had the spare metal, I just crafted one anyways. I'm sure it'll come in handy down the line. And if anybody here knows exactly what to do with this thing, please let me know in the comments. And with gaining weight on my mind, I spent the next few hours turning Mr. Brollow into Big Brollow. And then I got some sleep. The next morning, I continued with the grueling task of getting fatter by making myself a hearty stew. Though, the next few days would be a little bit routine. I'd work on the wall, run out of propane, do a run to the gas station to fill up, and then return to continue on the walls. I peppered in some car wreck dismantling, which came in handy since I had just recently reached level 7 in metalworking. This was very important since it meant that I now had enough experience to craft metal gates, which would help with the outer perimeter of my base. With that in mind, I decided to focus on getting some of the metal gates down. Unfortunately, I happened to be missing wire, which is one essential item that I would need for constructing the gates. So I headed into town to collect the wire that I would need, and I picked up some extra materials along the way.
I'm gonna check the bar here because there is usually alcohol, which would be pretty helpful, like bourbon for lighting things ablaze.
And since I was in the area, I went back to grab something I'd spotted earlier, the antique oven that I had left behind in the warehouse from earlier. After installing it back in my base, it wasn't much, but this base was actually starting to get somewhere. Now I could properly cook somewhere other than my RV, which was kind of comforting. So as I woke up the next day, I was faced with a bit of worrying news. Tonight would be the first Horde night, and to be honest, this was not ideal. I tried to set out 2 key goals for the day to prepare. The first would be to finish the metal gates I had collected the resources for earlier, and the second would be to build the stairs to give myself a bit of a vantage point for the Horde. So with the little time to waste, I got to work, quickly making some food and organizing my belongings before finally placing down the metal gates at the entrance of my base. Then I was focused on the next goal, the stairs. There was just one small problem. Well, a pretty big problem actually. I would need to get my carpentry to level 6 in order to build the stairs on my base.
I think, oh, I might need to get a little bit. I need to get 2 more levels so I can make a staircase, so.
And no matter how hard I grinded during the day, I couldn't get enough progress to level up in time. I spent all afternoon placing down wall frames to try and get far enough, but it was no luck. With not much time remaining, I turned my focus to preparing for the Horde. I grabbed my best weapons and spare guns just in case I'd need it. I loaded up all the magazines in advance and waited patiently for the zombies to attack. And after not much waiting, they had arrived.
Boy, here they come. Sprinter right there. Oh, they're breaking my walls. Dude, why my gun keep jamming for? Dude, why do I keep jamming? Right now?
I decided in the moment that it would be the best to push outside of my base, stopping them from doing too much damage to the walls. At first, this felt like it might be a bit of a risky decision, but they were so distracted wailing at my walls that it pretty much gave me a clean shot to start wiping them out.
Thinking about it now, keep hitting my walls. Yes, keep hitting them. Ooh! That one was... Wow. A little switcheroo on that guy.
This was a trade-off since I was watching them break the walls that I'd given my blood, sweat, and tears for, but I quickly worked my way through them from behind without them doing any permanent damage to the structure. With the first horde of many that I would face out of the way, I had laid down to rest after a tiring battle. To say that the stench of rotting flesh ruined my sleep would probably be a little bit exaggerated, but it wasn't pretty. The pile of corpses outside weren't exactly a pleasant addition to the decor of my new base, so even though it was kind of, well, nasty, I spent the morning moving corpses away from the wall and throwing them into a pile.
I wanted to remove all the corpses that were along, like, the sides of the walls.
Corpses in Project Zomboid can be kind of a silent killer. The more they build up, the more likely it is for you to get seriously sick, and in some cases, it can even kill you. So this was kind of necessary. And not to mention, but it had its perks. Later on, it would be easy for me to access their clothes if I wanted to level up my tailoring skill by tearing them apart. Still nasty, but it could come in handy. So I directed my focus back to leveling up my carpentry, knowing that the best way to get experience would be by dismantling large beds, since they give you the most experience in my opinion. I headed over to the Modrov Motel, where I'd be able to find a huge amount of them to take apart. It didn't take me long to clear out the zombie population, and after a short nap, I made my way inside. I would pretty much spend my whole day inside this motel, dismantling so many beds that honestly I started to question if I was even making good use of my time. And finally, after 12 full in-game hours, my carpentry was now level 6.
There we go.
I started to make my way back to the shelter where I spotted a large truck, which it turns out it was in great condition. And on top of all that, this truck had a staggering amount of storage space, 343.
Oh, 343. Hurry. Yes, please.
Personally, one of the largest trunk spaces I've ever seen. Luckily enough, I had chosen the burglar profession, so I was able to hotwire it, fill it up with some gas, and it was good to go. Getting both these vehicles back home, however, was less than ideal. Since neither of them were able to be towed, I had to use some random car I found nearby to get them back to my base. But after a bit of switching about and picking up a better tow truck along the way, finally all the cars were home safe. We were about 2 weeks into my adventure at this point, and finally I felt like it was going somewhere. I had level 6 carpentry, so I was able to build a set of stairs near the entrance, and with just one more carpentry level, I'd be able to build level 3 walls. So since I had the carpentry book needed to give me the experience boost, I spent some time in the RV reading. Afterwards, I took my shiny new big truck towards the forest nearby and cut down heaps of trees for building with. This truck was a game changer. For loot runs like this, since I could fit huge amounts of materials in the back, I managed to bring a grand total of 74 logs, which I spent a few hours sawing into planks so that I could begin to place a roof over my garage. And this was a pretty relaxing and in some ways satisfying task. Honestly, my biggest problem was that I was so calm I started to forget where I was walking.
Oh my god. Oh my god. I almost just killed myself. My health is so low because I fell like 2 feet. Oh god, I gotta be careful next time.
After surviving that minor misstep, I continued to set out the outline of my second floor. I managed to reach level 7 in carpentry, which would enable me to upgrade the walls for my second floor, and before tackling that, I decided to place some carpets for my second floor bedroom. The second floor was starting to take shape, not just as a structure, but as a home. I also managed to build a patio space above the garage where my RV would be stored. I had a lot in mind for this project. Like I said earlier, I had a rough idea of how I wanted to make it. Firstly, I wanted to utilize the metal exterior as a first layer of protection since they can take quite the hit from an oncoming horde. Next, I wanted to have 2 separate forms of space. A garage to store any cars, tools, and generic loot that you wouldn't find laying around in a kitchen. Speaking of, I also wanted a fully open living space with a kitchen, bathroom, and an area for the TV and bookshelves. I also left enough space at the bottom of the design to store my RV, sort of like another garage in the garage. Lastly, on the second floor, I would put my bedroom where in hopes to have some hot steamy men. My roof would also have plenty of extra space for maybe a rooftop farm, but that would probably be the last thing I do. And as an added bonus, I should also be able to paint these walls down the line. I was honestly truly living quite the life of luxury. My Zomboid character seems to have a better life planned out for him than I do for myself. However, the base wasn't really done yet, so in the meantime, I was still living out of my RV. But eventually, I would hope to be moving into this base living in it full time.
Oh, it was a good soup.
The next couple days were all about progress, repairing, constructing, collecting wood, and repeating the process over and over. Honestly, the only thing that kept me sane through all of this was how routine it all was. I was lost in a never-ending cycle and endless repetition, driven only by the hope that one day I could sit down on a cozy couch in a beautiful, comfortable, painted room and look out the window to a better world, one free of zombies and taxes? Maybe the latter was a little ambitious, but a man can dream. After grinding away for over 2 days, I was faced with the worrying news that a new horde was on its way. Ideally, I would have had the time to set up a proper walking area around the second floor to use as a lookout to fight the horde, but I had to prioritize. However, I was starting to run extremely low on ammunition. I quickly made a plan to visit the local police station to see if I can grab some more ammunition or guns, although when I got there were a lot more zombies surrounding it than I had hoped for.
Oh boy, this police station's full of zombies.
So I took a little bit of a risk and started unloading on the horde with my shotgun, but when I ran out of ammo, I had to make a pretty tough decision on whether to rush in and try to loot some ammunition or cut my losses, and naturally, I made the stupid decision.
If I can just quickly get in there and loot.
Ooh.
No. That was really close. No, the zombies are going inside the building. Okay. That's a problem.
I had completely forgotten that I would need a sledgehammer to actually break into the police station, so all this was pretty much for nothing. And with little time to waste, I raced home and prepared for the horde. This is where things get a little bit interesting, because there was an issue with my core base design that I hadn't really thought about. My vantage points from the roof weren't actually able to see any of the zombies on the walls.
I can't see down here. Small problem in my design. They're gonna break through my gates.
So as they started to surround my base, I'd either have to sacrifice the entire base itself or exit my base and clear them out from outside. Naturally, I couldn't afford to have them take control of everything I'd worked towards, so I sacrificed the safety of my roof to push out and clear them from outside.
At least they're not, like, focusing me.
And while I thought it might be a dangerous decision, it turns out the zombies were more interested in hugging my walls instead of hugging me. So after another hour or two of picking them off, I had survived another horde night. The next day pretty much went the same as the day after the last horde night. I picked up all the mushy, rotten zombie corpses and piled them up somewhere further away where I could loot them and burn them later. And again, it was pretty nasty, but a survivor's gotta do what a survivor's gotta do. Fortunately, the base was in a pretty good condition. I mainly had to repair the main fence gates as they had taken the most damage. This horde did teach me something valuable though. In order to safely pick off the hordes in the future, I would have to build some kind of external wall or peek down so that I wouldn't have the same problem with not having a line of sight on them. This would be something I'd write down to address later on. I spent the next couple days repairing, building on my base, and furnishing it with all the furniture and appliances that I had found in my travels. Things were really starting to take shape. Now, I felt both safe and comfortable inside these walls. Honestly, it felt a little strange. Since I had been living out of my RV so long, having somewhere neat and open was refreshing and a change of scenery. Unfortunately, I couldn't really rest easy just yet though. I had to work towards preparing myself for the future, getting more guns and ammunition, setting up a consistent food source, and further reinforcing my base for the next horde. With my goals for the near future established, I got to work. Heading back to the police station from a few days ago, I snuck inside with my sledgehammer, looting whatever I could find, but unfortunately there was no guns or ammo, just a bunch of equipment. What? There is no ammo, just clothing in here. Tell me there's another room I can get ammo. There's no way. But this put me in a pretty difficult position. Without being able to use the guns I had, I wasn't able to clear out large hordes and loot some of the nearby buildings. But I didn't know of any guaranteed places for more ammunition nearby, so I just ended up aimlessly driving through the town without any real direction. Eventually though, I decided to just head home and pivot my focus on one of my other goals. Pretty much, a food source. I started laying out the foundations of a rooftop farm. This was pretty important because I was starting to get low on food. And yes, this may shock you, food doesn't exactly grow instantly. It was a good idea for this to be set up sooner rather than later. After the main setup for the farm was done, I grabbed some more wood from the forest to craft a few animal traps, laying them in the woods nearby to hopefully catch some birds for food. It was primitive, but necessary to stay alive. Afterwards, I figured it was a good time to set up some rain collectors to later use for my irrigation on my farm, which wasn't too difficult to get set up. With a productive day in the rear view mirror, I went to sleep off the rest of the night. The next morning, I spent organizing all the loot in my base, which by now I'd done a few times, but since I was an idiot, I kept making it a mess again. I did plan on heading to the warehouse I visited earlier in the run, but things took a pretty nasty turn. What I hit? Oh my goodness. How'd this happen? I hit a fucking stop sign and now my arm has a big ass hole in it. I got glass in my arm somehow. That kind of derailed my plans for the day, since a deep wound like this would need to be stitched up, or it could be the end of my run altogether. So unfortunately, I would have to return back to my base to address this issue. So after cleaning and stitching up my arm, I was forced to sleep off the night yet again. Though with the wound in my arm being dealt with and it's still healing, I decided it would be a good time to head on a bit of a road trip. The nearest location to find ammunition and guns was at a gun store over in West Point, and while this would be a bit of a trek, it was a necessary one. So I headed out early and made my way over towards the gun store, and after clearing out some of the nearby zombies, I made my way in. This looting run was far more profitable than the police station. Oh yes, this is more like it. This is what I'm looking for. I was able to gather a decent amount of various guns and ammo, and since it was on my way home, I dropped by the hardware store to get some tools, crafting materials, and I even got my hands on an industrial sized propane tank, which would be super helpful later on. Ooh, an industrial propane tank? That's really good. I'm definitely taking that back with me. I also happened to stop at the grocery store to stock up on some food since it would be some time until my farm was up and running. And then afterwards, I started to head home, cleaning up some zombies on my way, though I didn't know why, but the thuds on the hood of my car provided a certain cathartic release. Each one satisfied me deeply inside, like a hunger was being satisfied. Thud after thud after thud. I couldn't help smiling as their zombie flesh splattered all over my... Anyway, I spent the next day or two unloading all of my loot from the big looting run and cleaning out and repairing my car, heading back to the warehouse for a few items I'd left behind and some buckets of paint. Then on my way home, I grabbed some excess furniture from the trailer park houses nearby, like a chrome sink, a bookshelf, and a large bed, lugging it all the way back to my base to continue furnishing my dream home. Got a nice little bed for myself. I gotta put a roof over this, but got a bed at least. By this point, I had almost reached my goal. The base was almost perfect. It was furnished, secure, and well stocked. But I still had a few things that I had to do before I could call it a day. There were a lot of finishing touches like extra defenses, furniture, and of course, power. Because if things got bad, I could always just stick a fork inside the power. So I dealt with the simple things first. Finished up the roof over my bedroom, finished up the patio space next to my bedroom, and then pretty much sealed up the second floor except for the furnishings. I then decided to do a quick run into town to get some extra furniture and some fun stuff for my base, and I definitely did not run into any trouble. Oh my god, where did all these guys come from? Holy shit, good thing I got out of there.
Don't stall.
So after that all went down, I thought it'd be best if I headed home. But this was a pretty special night, since this would be the first night I'd actually be sleeping in a brand new bed. So after I assembled my bed in my new bedroom, I settled down to sleep, and maybe it was because I was cooped up in my RV for so long, but in some ways this would be the best night's rest I'd ever get. There was a faint scent of zombie flesh and sawdust in the air, but it was just nice to be in a new space. I then awoke on the next day, on day 28. It's kind of crazy to think, but it's almost been a month since I set out to build this fully reinforced base. And with the end goal in sight, I started the day unloading the car, organizing my loot, but most importantly, placing down a lot of the furniture I'd been collecting over the last 4 weeks. This was a pretty satisfying sight to see. After hours and many in-game days working towards this very goal, I was happy to see everything was finally starting to come together. Afterwards, I decided to head into town in search for more things I could put in my new home. This is also where I found a fenced-in neighborhood, which it turned out to be exactly what I was looking for. I then made an opening in the fence to serve as an easy access point to the houses from the main road, which I had also previously cleared of zombies at some point earlier on in this run. So after breaking down the fence, I ransacked all the nearby houses for lights, wardrobes, a fridge, a toilet, a sink, and even much more. But after robbing all these homes of their now unneeded appliances, I headed home. This is also why I love this game so much. Every home and or building on the map has plenty of items, furniture, and random decor that just ties back into the game's sandbox. For example, if I see something I want, I can just take it with me. It's such a freeing experience. Anyways, after I returned back to my base, I quickly unloaded my truck and decided to return back to the same area I was at before, just in case I forgot anything. But that would pretty much be my last run out to town for now. So I took everything that I had been gathering up over the last couple days and decided to place everything down in its final spots around my household.
That's so nice. My house is actually coming together.
I was also lucky enough to get my hands on a second generator at some point, which is exactly what I was after, since it meant I could finally power my house. Now, this is also where my masterpiece would come to life. This husk of what was once a steel cube was now becoming a home in front of my eyes. With each light placed, it lit up. And after a few short hours of me doing interior decorating magic, it was finally done. This would be the penultimate day in this base. Before the next day, I would face a huge horde for the 3rd time in this challenge. And with this base in its final form, I slept better than I've ever slept before, safe and sound in my amazing new home. And although this didn't have wheels on it, it had something my RV could never have: actual real security.
Oh man, is it perfect timing or what, bro? There's a horde night coming tonight, and I just finished my house last night. I think I have an idea. I need to get some more cars though.
However, the final day was all about preparing for the biggest horde yet. I collected a few cars and brought them back to my base to act as a form of barricade in front of the gates. And then I did a few finishing touches on the base itself before preparing my guns and ammunition for the horde that was to come. And just as I finished aligning my new cars in front of the gates, a horde night with over 300 zombies would begin.
Alright, where are they all at? Here they come. Follow me, boys. Follow me. Come here. Get off my walls. I think they're breaking the wall. I think they're breaking in some walls. Can't tell. Yeah, they broke in. I think that one. Why is he not reloading? Please, just reload. Get off my walls. Get off my walls. Get off my walls. Hey, quit breaking my boxes. Oh, they're in there. Oh my god! Gun. Why are you pumped? I think we did it. Go to sleep and see what the damage is looking like. Alright, 7 AM. Morning. After the horde. Okay. Just one of the crates are messed up. Pretty damn good. I'd say building a giant metal base like this is actually worth it.
And, well, with my base fully complete, I could finally enjoy the peace of mind of finally having a place to live for a while. Well, that is, until next time.